What's up, everybody? Time for another game theory video. If you like the videos, like, sub, silly, comment, share, support the channel if you want. Appreciate it. Thanks. Today, obviously, we've been talking a lot about the homogenization of games and why it's bad. And in that last video, I made the sort of devil's advocate argument for why it's Dragon Ball Fighters compared to Street Fighter 6. Although the argument I was making, the statement, not even really an argument, it was more of a statement because you can't argue what I said, which is the beauty of it almost. But I kind of played devil's advocate for Dragon Ball Fighters, and I want to touch a little bit more upon that today about the differences between Dragon Ball Fighters and the difference between Street Fighter 6 in terms of homogenization. But the long forward, because I got to ramble a bit before. Again, the last video, I was doing that sort of thought experiment, right? Ask yourself, right? Ask yourself, what is the best move you think that is in fighting games, right? And what I mean by that, what is the best thing? What is the thing that you normally see in the narrative, right, of a fighting game, right? Discourse, right? What is the general consensus usually that is the strongest thing in a game? The most degenerate thing in the game, right? The most detrimental thing in the game, whatever you want to call it. And it just so happens that it tends to be when there's more of a general consensus on what is the degenerate thing in the game, what is the worst thing in the game, what is the problem in the game, what is the best thing in the game, whatever. It often is actually the homogenization of the game, right? Is it not? Again, we use games like Street Fighter 6. What are the main discourses? What are the main narratives in the ether of a game like Street Fighter 6 when you see people complain about it, right? And I know some people are going to be like, oh, I don't like JP, whatever. Okay, I got you. But generally speaking, you see people complain about Slimer, Drive Rush, right? I mean, sometimes you see people complain about Parry, but guess what? That's a homogenization, right? And of course, Parry did have, at a time, many content creators were making many videos about it, right? It was a main topic, and it's funny that the main topic was something like a homogenization of the game of fighting games, right? Even some people talked about, Drive Impact, another homogenization. The point is, generally Street Fighter 6, guess what? The main topics of conversation are the homogenization of it, like I said it would be, right? Just like the main topics of conversation for a game like CVS2, guess what? Generally tends to be role canceling, a homogenized mechanic. Isn't that amazing? That's the most detrimental thing to the game. Game changing, breaking. Street Fighter Alpha 2. What is the main topic? What is the main narrative of the game if you were getting into a game like Alpha 2? Custom combos are broken. That's the main fucking narrative of it, right? And of course, like I said, the beauty of the argument is that if it is not true, this is why I know this is why is the beauty of it. If it is not true, and there is actually an individualized quotation marks problem, that actually shows that the game is unique when there is not homogenization. Isn't that amazing? Like, and then even again, if you get to a game like Super Turbo, whatever it might be, or CVS1, which I used as a very random example, right? It's harder to think of what is the exact narrative, right? There's no homogenization, right? Even in the discourse, right? You could pick a lot of different things. You're like, oh, maybe that's the most degenerate thing in the game. Maybe that's the best thing in the game, right? Oh, well, that's good too. It's harder to find a common enemy, let's say, because guess what? When games are not homogenized, you don't have that common enemy, so to speak. Let's say that common discourse. Easy to see the problem, right? So getting onto this, the difference between a game like Street Fighter 6 and why I played devil's advocate for a little bit for Dragon Ball Fighters. Although of course Dragon Ball Fighter Z, it does actually prove my point. When you think about the game in general, of course there have been better characters than other characters. Some oh, this character is degenerate, this character is too good, whatever it might be. But if you think about a game like Dragon Ball Fighters, one of the main narratives that people have always complained about the game is homing dash, a homogenized thing. If you look through the history of Dragon Ball Fighters, isn't it funny that the most complained about thing throughout the history of the game has something to do with homing dash? Just certain people don't like it, right? A homogenization of the game, right? Crazy, right? I know. But why for me personally, that I say that Dragon Ball Fighter Z is okay, quotation marks, when you think about this, although it did prove my point, is if we look at the difference between, wow, 5 minute forward between Street Fighter 6 to get this started, right? But watch the other video if you want me to more deep dive into this stuff. If we look at Street Fighter 6 and we look at the drive thing, right? And I want you to really think, right? What is the one new perspective that Street Fighter 6 is putting on fighting games, okay? That's what I want to think. Because one of the only new things you can do in a fighting game is you can put a new system in it to give you a new perspective on the game. And I said right from the beginning, and I know I'm right. I'm always right. It's terrible. I don't know. Maybe one day I'm going to work for Capcom, and guess what? I'm going to become retarded like so many other people. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe once you start shilling and you start getting money from all these different companies, you know what I mean? Maybe your brain just turns off. But at least I'll say that I've had 25 years or however long I've been making it. God, these CBS 2 is when I first started. And even then I was still talking about games before then, but you know, whatever. I have so many, I've been right for so long. I'm due for some L's eventually. But Street Fighter 6, what did I say when that was going to be the props, right? Is this system, even though from a sort of perspective, you could say that Street Fighter 6 is my meter versus your meter, right? Not every game can say that. There is a pretty distinctive tug of war between my meter and your meter, right? You can even lose your meter, right? And then you get grayed out. And if the other guy has some of his meter left, he can drive impact you to get dizzy, which saying that is interesting, right? I think if you're actually thinking about video games objectively, even though some people I'm sure complain, oh, I don't like getting drive rushed or drive impacted in the corner, whatever the fuck it's called, right? I get dizzy. But if you think about it, that's pretty interesting. That's a cool spin, I think, right? My meter versus your meter, right? That sort of situation. We also have situations where, because of, God forbid, a move is just invincible, period, right? But, you know, for what it's worth, oh, fuck, you know, if I use my last little EX meter to be invincible, I'm going to be in this gray state, you know what I mean? And then you're like, ah, fuck. So I'll waste one of my supers. I'll waste it there, you know, for a reversal because I don't want to waste it and go into burnout after that. That's a sort of play between the top and bottom, non-binary gender fluid system. That is something new. But I also said, even saying this, guess what? I'm like, you know what? I'm afraid that the supers are just going to be generally combo fodder. Was I not correct? Just looking at it, if I just look at it at face value, I can tell you Street Fighter 6, there might be something there. But I said my fears, and my fears were correct, right? And I'm like, I hope supers generally aren't just for combo fodder. And guess what they are, right? Every now and then, you know, you got like a Blanca super, level 2, whatever the fuck it is, and a Guile super, whatever. You know, but generally speaking, these supers are just arbitrary. They don't really do anything else from the other guy. It's just, oh, I'm doing my combo. I got a level 3. I'm a super. Okay, you know, generally, there's minute differences, but generally speaking, it's not like Ryu was doing, like I said, CVS1, a Shinchoruken, and you're like, wow, that's the most powerful super in the game, I think, right? I think it's the most powerful level 2 super in the game, at least, maybe. Or ratio 2 character, I think, maybe, right? Am I correct? Something like that. He can just totally deplete your life bar. He has different uses for his super, right, compared to other characters, right? But generally, supers are just combo fodder, right? And I was afraid that this meter, because I was like, EX moves are bad, everyone's EX moves are just going to be, oh, my generic version of this, your generic version of this. And guess what? I was correct. Slimer, I'm like, because of the homogenization of normals, people are probably just going to be using Slimer the same way. I'm going to drive rush the same way as you. I'm going to drive rush the same way as you, right? And I was like, that's going to be a fucking problem, dude. You're going to see the homogenization of the game. And that's why you see so many people complain about the game, because everyone uses the meter the same way, generally speaking. Even though there is little bits of differences. My tug of war here, you know, whatever, you know, my meter versus your meter, that's something that's not in every Street Fighter game. We all use the meter the same way, right? That's why it's the main topic of discourse. Because these characters with all their same normals, you don't see a difference, right? Now, compared to a game like Dragon Ball Fighters, although homing dash, is a homogenized mechanic, right? It is inherently also tied to the new perspective on fighting games. You cannot have a Street Fighter game where Ryu is flying through fireballs. You can't have a Street Fighter game where all the fireballs are reflectable, right? There is this distinctive new meta in Dragon Ball Fighters that's just not possible in any other game. How blocking works with fire. Oh, this is a block string, but if you've done fireball, it's technically not a block string. And now I can reflect out of it, or I can homing dash out of it, right? I've actually said before, if I was making Dragon Ball Fighters, and this is why I talk about sometimes, you need a producer or whatever that actually says it's like, oh, hey, this is a good idea. Good idea, Jimmy, Timmy, Billy, whatever the fuck your name is. Jose, I don't know, right? It's like, you got a good idea there, right? We should roll with this. We should go farther with this. This is why I've talked about it like a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ. They should have done more with Vegeto's Banshee Blast, right? Because Vegeto's Banshee Blast is a move that cannot exist in any other fighting game. You can't have a move like Vegeto's Banshee Blast, a 5 fireball thing that splits across the whole screen in any other fighting game besides a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ, because it doesn't make any sense. It would just be too powerful. But because you have things like homing dashing, a homogenized mechanic like homing dashing, you've automatically given me a tool to get out of it. Even if you're doing block strings with it, because guess what? Fireballs don't actually count as real block stun, right? That's why I said if I was actually making the game, I would have put in then another layer to the meta of, I would have actually had a EX then Banshee Blast to make it a laser beam. So then there's a guessing game, and I would have added in, besides another character just reflecting, I would have added in a to throw into the mix like a vacuum cleaner character. Instead of reflecting, they suck up the fireballs, right? The point is, Dragon Ball Fighters, you can see the homing dash is directly, and it should have been even more focused on all this stuff, the new perspective on the game. Right? So although my argument works because, I'm always right. You know what I mean? Homing dash is pretty much the main narrative of the game when you think about what is the main thing that people have seemingly always complained about for the game through years, right? It's homing dash, right? They just don't like it, right? But correlation doesn't equal causation, but it still proves my point that when you have a homogenized mechanic that every character can use, you will see in fighting games that tends to be the main discourse that will, the general consensus of what will be complained about, right? And when you have these more unique games, it's harder to find a general consensus on what people hate, right? Now, if we again go back to a game like Street Fighter 6 and you're thinking about Slimer and all this kind of stuff, Slimer rushing in on the guy and your move doing a little bit more stun, that's not really that big brain, right? Is that really tied to this new perspective on fighting games that is not possible in any other game? And I guess you could be like, oh, well, if you waste a meter, you're closer to getting burned out. And that's kind of an interesting dizzy thing. But generally speaking, let's be honest. That's not that big brain. It's just not, right? So I just wanted to play a little bit as devil's advocate for why I'm quotation marks okay with it in a game like Dragon Ball Fighters, so to speak. Because I think Dragon Ball Fighters is really a correlation doesn't equal causation. Although even saying that, I could say, again, the problem with Street Fighter 6 is, we all use Slimer, Drive Rush in the same way, right? If characters had more unique normals, you might see different ways in it. And I've said before that, I would assume if the game continues to be updated, I was thinking, just like they're doing with the, what's it called? City of the Wolves, right? The Fatal Fury game, right? I would assume that they're going to have I could be wrong about that, but I would assume if you keep updating the game for so many years, right, that maybe there's going to be update where like, oh, you can Slimer now into special, and this special has different properties or some bullshit like that, right? Or something even, I don't think I've said this in a video, but thinking about the CVS examples, I'm surprised they don't have something like in CVS2 they have special move cancels or whatever, right? Or super to special or super, whatever. I wouldn't be surprised, or I guess they could, do something like, oh, hey, if you do super, I can waste some stocks for a level 1 super, cancel it into like a CVS2 cancel, right? But that would be, God forbid, that would probably be too unique for a game like Street Fighter 6, right? So I don't know. So again, I guess they're two sides of the same coin. They both show a fundamental flaw. Dragon Ball Fighters obviously has lots of flaws, and they both show a homogenization problem. But in general, Dragon Ball Fighters, at least you can see there's more to work with there, I think. It's still a perspective that can't be in other games, right? You could put a meter like this into Dragon Ball Fighter. I mean, you could, right? You could do something like this, right? You could put a green bar here for your EX moves or whatever the fuck it is, right? You could do that, right? Oh, if I use too much, or just like, oh, hey, I'm charged up, I've lost too much. You could do something weird, try to work around with it in Dragon Ball Fighter. But guess what? Street Fighter characters, guess what? Not every Street Fighter character has a fireball. Not every Street Fighter character can start fucking flying, right? That's why I would say Dragon Ball Fighter Z as well as one of the biggest drop balls ever in the history of fucking fighting games. Very sad. And, Street Fighter 6 is just... I can't believe I should have put the screen cap. There is actually... I saw a guy, someone was posting my video, and he posted some stupid shit. Like, he was like, I can't believe Clayton doesn't realize that Street Fighter 6 is bigger than any Street Fighter. I just, like, the lies we tell ourselves. The lies we tell ourselves. You're fucking retarded. What are you talking about? If you like the videos, like, sub, silly comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Thanks. The end.